11 votes to 7. Thank you, Chair.
Kia ora, thank you. We now move to the next item, and that is item 16, the ongoing management of motorised vehicles. I will move that, and second, Councillor Cashmore, Deputy Mayor. Before we do, I just want to acknowledge the work that Samantha's done in regards to the recommendations, and we're going to put up the recommendations that our team have seen and are supportive. So they are the recommendations that will be going up, and I think Scott and Stephen, if we end up, when you present, can you just then explain C and everything else around the support for that, and then we'll get into Pātai and Whakaaro. Kia ora nā. So Samantha, thank you so much for the work. What's happened? Apologies for the delay. The Stephen and Scott are going to get their headphones because they need the headphones plugged into the computer. So apologies. When you're ready, gentlemen. Can you hear Scott? Okay, sweet.
Kia ora tātou, ko Scott Silver, Taku Ingoa. Thanks for the opportunity to come and present to the committee this afternoon. Look, I take the report as read, although there are a couple of highlights that I'd like to point out as we go through this. We've had a number of reports come to the committee over the last probably year or so, mainly around the concerns that we've had around Motorized beach, user safety, environmental protection, fire risk and driver behaviour. September last year, the committee approved the implementation of the management measures associated with vehicle access to the beach. This included the committee requesting staff to investigate and implement control measures. This work is currently underway with support from Rodney Local Board funds. Additional to that, is staff were to investigate a fee-based permit and options for engagement process. The report recommends consultation with the community on whether to introduce a fee and the value of that fee. Since that time, we've been through another summer period, and as highlighted in the report, there are a number of actions that have been undertaken. We actually have a presentation that we would like to work through. I'll hand it over to my...
My apologies.
I'll hand it over to my colleague Stephen. He's going to try to get out of that, but I'll make him do it. So this just will provide you a bit of an oversight in terms of the management actions that happened over the summer.
Yeah, forgive me,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to get linked in to the feed.
We can actually hear you.
Cool. Thank you. As Scott said, the the work through the summer period based on the recommendations from the governing body or the post committee prior to in September of last year. We implemented the summer closure period from 31st of December through to the 17th of January. We undertook targeted education. It wasn't as thorough as we would have enjoyed. It did involve an improvement on the brochure with a greater level of clarity to the information we were providing. We also gratefully accepted some financial support from four-wheel drive clubs who provided a very large 8x4 trailer-based sign that we could mount on the entry points to Coast Road and elsewhere on the beach. We improved our signage. Police ran their annual targeted Operation Black Sand. It was a little quiet given the beach was closed for the best part of 4 weeks through that. But when the beach reopened, they did engage in a number of targeted checkpoints on both Wilson Road and Coast Road, checking permits and turning people around if they didn't have the appropriate permit and or warrants and registrations. To be fair, we did change the signage on the second section of Coast Road to drop it from 50k to 30k. Anecdotal feedback we have is it hasn't made much of a difference to speeds. We did put some information out to endeavour to restrict the area south of the Okiritoto stream to parked vehicles only. It is an area all vehicles accessing the beach have to drive through, so that was a little difficult. Sorry, beg your pardon, my screen has just changed. Bear with me while I find it again. Cool, thank you. We do continue to engage with a community group, the Community Advisory Group, and in fact we met with them last evening around this report back to the Post Committee. They were provided some feedback on that, on the information that we're providing today. And if I may, their feedback was of a view that, and very strongly held view last night, but there's been some further conversation today. They believe that access, if we're looking at controlling access to the beach, that access should be controlled at all public entry points at the same time, rather than just one prior to another. And the reasons for that will become obvious a little further on. And also they were strongly supportive of a paid permit system being the first step rather than a second step, with ring fence funding to support some targeted enforcement and or compliance activity on the beach. We haven't met with the joint agency group since our last presentation to the Post Committee. We do continually monitor vehicle access to the beach, and there's a little bit of information coming up that'll show what that is. We're currently investigating paid permits. So, yep. In terms of the targeted education, it's just a couple of pictures of the information that is present. The signage to the left is on Wilson Road, Rimmers Road, and Coast Road. And this image is just to show you the complexity around trying to restrict the area south of Okiritoto stream, which is the area highlighted in the blue oblong. Yep. And if you have a look at the chart in front of you at the moment, that's tracking vehicle volume onto Motorized Beach through all the entry points since the start of our monitoring the 3 common public entry points. As you can see, prior to sort of roundabout Labour weekend of 2020 was our busiest weekend at that time, where we had about 855 vehicles moving on the beach on one day. Labour weekend of 2021, we had 1,688 vehicles moving onto the beach on one day. That is an exaggeration of numbers, primarily because that was at a time that Auckland was able to leave their homes, but they weren't able to leave Auckland. So they couldn't then go and four-wheel drive wherever else they wanted to go. Yep. Excuse me while we just change headsets. Thank you for your patience. Yeah. Yep. Mike's off is my middle name. Cheers. So you're able to play the. Yep, please.
Just letting everybody know they're getting a video ready to show. That's why the delay.
Yeah.
Just look, everybody, if you go online, you can access the video. We're just continuing with the IT issues that we're having. So we will discard the video. You can have a look at it at your leisure. And I'll go back to Scott and Stephen.
Just checking that was the last of the videos of that slides with it. That was the last one. Okay. Okay. Yes, apologies for the video. It was actually a nice snapshot of some of the issues we've been dealing with over the summer period. Jack Jones, one of our rangers out of Motorized, was the star of the show, and it just sort of indicated some of the challenges we had over that time, but and the enforcement we've been trying to take on with that. So if you get a chance to have a look at that, it would be great. I think finally, Stephen's provided that overview in terms of some of the actions we've taken following the last report, and the control measures that we've tried to work through to try to make Muriwai a bit of a safer place. I guess in sort of finally just sort of wrapping up, I just want to provide a bit of a timeline in terms of where we go from here. I think we've got one further slide that we were going to just, I can quickly talk to, and then happy to answer any questions from there. So just the timeline we've got in front of ourselves, obviously we're reporting today to the committee. If we get a support for progressing this ahead, we'll start the consultation with the community effective as of Monday and run that through for a month to gain feedback from the community in terms of whether they would support a fee and the value of that fee. Intentions is to report back to the committee August, September, and then in order to adopt the fee, if that's supported, then we'd have to report to the Finance and Performance Committee. And that's the program in front of us at this stage. So happy to hand it over and answer any questions you may have.
Tēnā kōrua, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I'll go to the first pātai question, and that is Councillor Sayers.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to really acknowledge Stephen Scott for the effort that's gone out there over this period, and the teams. I think it's important. I've also, by the way, seen the videos. Okay, so Mr. Chair, I've got a number of questions, just over half a dozen or so, just for clarification. Having read the report, I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to Scott or Stephen beforehand. So just in terms of when we go out to find out what value that fee should be, and I understand it can be up to $150 per annum. Are we going to present it as options? So if you pay, so much money, then you get so much back. Or do we say, what do you think the fee should be? How will we present that in terms of gaining feedback from the public of where they think that fee should be sitting? Is there any thought about how we present that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sayers. Look, in terms of the fee, our approach with going out with the engagement of the community is going to be based on a fee up to a certain value. We've indicated at this stage a maximum of $200, and getting the community's feedback on that fee. We have put some suggestions around there around a period, so that's an annual fee, but we've also provided a couple of questions around whether the community would support a lesser period of time, so 6 months or 3 months. We have done some numbers so that the current permit system we have in place, we've used that as a bit of a basis to determine what type of fee would be required in order to maintain a control measure such as a gate and things like signage and any other continued work. So with the collection of that fee, we have talked about having that ring fenced to use solely at Muriwai, and any additional funds that would be gathered from that would be used for environmental protection, protecting dunes, planting programs and the like. So at this stage, we want to gauge the level of comfort with that indication of that fee, and we would take that advice on and then look at how it would transpire into a fee.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. The second question was just around the seasonal closure time period. We've had ranges here. We've been like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, up to 4 weeks closure. I couldn't quite pick up from the report what we were perhaps tending towards in terms of what we might present to the community going forward. How long that should be? Is there any thought on that, please?
If I may, the last approved closure for the year just passed from 31 December was for 3 weeks, so 31 December to 17 January. That did extend by 1 week, primarily to manage extreme fire risk at that time. So the closure effectively, a council approved closure was through to the 17th. That period seemed to work relatively well last year. The year prior, it was for the Christmas period and New Year. This year, it was primarily for the New Year period and early January, which seemed to work better anecdotally.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So we're looking perhaps a kick-off date around the 31st through to the 17th. Have I got that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. In terms of, in your presentation, you mentioned about there being some checks done, Operation Black Sands, I think it was called. How, just some comment about how effective was that in terms of the number of people that got caught or turned around? Do we have any stats on that? Like, are we talking hundreds, dozens? Do we have a feel for it? Doesn't have to be specific.
I don't have the exact numbers from those checkpoints. What I do know is with social media, the way it works these days, those checkpoints are effective for a very short time. People are very well connected, and all of a sudden the volume of traffic accessing the beach at the points where the checkpoints are placed tends to dry up pretty quickly. Strangely, it comes back to normal once the checkpoints have disbanded. So there were, certainly in the tens, it probably wasn't in the hundreds, but there were a number of vehicles turned around and people who weren't permitted, not able to access the beach.
Okay, thank you for that. Just in the report itself, there are a few clarification questions. Clause 20, it talks about how it's difficult to enforce vehicles on the beach. So if you could just help me, if there's 3 access points that we just talked about, I've made the presumption that that's where the enforcement efforts might be targeted, and you've just mentioned some of the pitfalls of that. So is that what a difficult enforcer is meaning, or is it meaning once they're on the beach, catching them? I guess I'm saying, if you can catch them before they go on the beach, surely that's better. So could I just get a bit of understanding about what difficulties the staff have been experiencing, or the police, in terms of difficult to enforce?
It's the latter. Once they're on the beach is circa 45 kilometres long. People aren't meant to be in the dunes, but they do go there. People aren't meant to be in the adjacent private land, but they do go there. Some of the vehicles that are accessing those areas are much more capable of doing so than the ranger staff and or police, who are endeavouring to make sure people are following the rules. So certainly trail bikes are a very, very difficult vehicle to stop and speak to the owners of.
Thanks, Stephen. Also, Stephen, clause 21, I haven't gone to all 3 of those, or I went to 2 of those public meetings. Clause 21 talks about there being general support. So how do we get to that conclusion? Is there any, could you just run through the background of how you make that statement that you feel that there's general support in place? Because it's just I didn't quite pick up that vibe.
The meetings had a very unique vibe. The general support that we reference, Councillor, is the anecdotal conversations we have with people through the summer periods while those closures are in play. We've certainly had some support additionally through the submissions on the management plan, which is currently in review. So that's the basis for that comment.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much. Just if I may, Mr. Chair, just a couple more, probably a bit more specific, trying to understand, like if we put a gate in, we can put the gate in on our Auckland Council land, but there's also that dock access and the Auckland Transport Controlled Paper Road, which they call Wilson Road. And my questions probably go towards that Wilson Road. So the first one, I'd just like to understand, like, what's Auckland Transport saying in terms of their willingness to close that Wilson Road in order for you to be able to effectively implement the seasonal closure? I just didn't pick it in the report, so I thought I'd ask the question.
In relation to the seasonal closure, we've found Auckland Transport tremendously supportive around implementation of that. Particularly, it ties into fire risk quite heavily at that time of year. In relation to a more permanent management point or control point, it's a paper road. They have their own rules to work through. That is a little more difficult. Okay,
thanks, Steve. The final kind of questions still around that Wilson Road. Is that also Fenton Track, or is that the same? I think it's the same idea, but look, I'll keep it. Just with relation to Wilson Road, the clause 72. Justin, what's the trust there that I think they're managing or has a lease over the forest there? What's their relationship of the trust and the paper road? Does the paper road run over their land or beside it? What's the relationship between the two? And I think there might be some other private property owners along that stretch of Wilson Road. So does the Wilson Road run over the forestry land or beside it?
Wilson Road runs through Naumonga Whakahiho Kaipara Ngāhere Limited, being a forest. The Ngāhere actually reports to or is under the umbrella of Naumonga Whakahiho Kaipara Development Trust. So, but the Wilson Road is effectively an unformed legal road that runs from the metalled section through the forest through to the beach. It does have private properties that boundary it on the lake side and also on the southern side before it enters the forest.
Right. And final question, Scott, is around the trust. I notice haven't chosen, I think, not to make comment to this committee about their position. And I noticed way back in our first reports as well, they never kind of made any comment. So can you just give me a feel for, like, have they been approached? Are they aware of the situation, and are they just choosing not to make a comment, or is there anything you can indicate in terms of their support or non-support, or are they staying neutral?
We have ongoing conversations with Naumonga Whakahi o Kaipara Development Trust. At this stage, they have chosen not to formally present a position. We will continue to discuss with them the issues on Muriwai. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you, Chair, for indulging me for that long on those clarification questions. Thank you.
Kia ora kapai. Matua Glenn, te kauhau taku, ko koe.
Yeah. Are we finished? Are we finished questions?
Aye, there's nothing else I've got in there, na ko koe.
Kapai. Thank you, Chair. And so this is my comment to this. These are my comments to this this item. Since 2004, the Kaipara Marae and through Nārima and then through the Y312, which later became Naumonga Whakahi, have been consistent about always wanting closure of vehicles to this beach. They've accepted that it's very hard to make that happen because, one, it requires only the police can remove people from the beach. The council cannot. However, I will say this. Everything about vehicles on the beach is contrary to our public safety bylaw, to the taruke or tawhiri kaupapa, and to the application by Ngāti Whātua and the Otakanini Tōpū under the MACA proposals, and the application under the Te Rūnanga o Ngāti Whātua significant site regarding Muriwai Beach. As far as fees are concerned, my tupuna already paid fees with blood. So I definitely won't be paying money to go on that beach, whether I walk it or I drive on it. But my issue is actually, this is so dangerous. Nowhere in this country would you allow basically an open road with people driving up and down at 60k plus. Because let's be honest, if you're driving at 30k, you're most probably going to get bogged halfway down the track. Nowhere in this country do we allow that to happen. And so I'm really surprised, and this is an issue that has been faced by most councils and iwi. They're facing the same thing on 90 Mile Beach. And if we go down to Kariatahi, I've seen some real close shaves there as well. And so I won't be supporting this because it goes in the face of what mana whenua have asked. I understand the process, and the process is always that we will seek consultation, and if we don't seek consultation, council can't move, can't scratch its head. But from an iwi point of view, because I spoke to the trustees of Maunga last night and this morning, they are still sticking to the consistent corridor that we spoke about in 2004 when the ARC first came and talked about the loss of toherua. People have gone on this beach ever since the government allowed them to go and get toherua. And what happened was we lost our kai. So not only is there a cultural diminishment of our tino rangatiratanga, there's a clear breach of our treaty rights to our taonga. And so therefore I cannot support this in order to be consistent with the request of mana whenua, that's Ngāti Whātua, that the closure of the beach occur and then we pull it back from there. It's not that we don't want people going on the beach. People can still hikoi haere. You know, but the mauri of this beach is being destroyed by vehicles going up and down. This is the Ara Wairua. Tell you what, there'll be no Wairua going up that beach. And so so that's where I am. And I'll just thank you, Chair, for allowing me to say this. I appreciate your indulgence on this. But I think I have to be very consistent with what I've said previously, and I've continued to say since 2004, and that is I cannot support vehicles on this beach. Thank you, Chair.
Ka pai, ngā mihi ki a koe e te rangatira. Ngā mihi. Look, I've just had two more come in late, but I will allow the late requests for comment. So Councillor Sayers and Councillor Henderson, I'm hoping that you're the last, not unless I get another late request. So Councillor Sayers.
Thanks, Alf. I will also not be supporting the recommendation, but perhaps for slightly different reasons than my colleague from the Independent Maori Statutory Board. And because today we're also approving B, which is actually approving the seasonal closures. And if I just look at Wilson Road, which is a public road, you know, that people from all around New Zealand can use a public road. So it's not just a small section of the community that should be dictating what happens. This has actually nationwide ramifications. And I think there's an unintended consequence that I've become aware of, that that the seasonal closures of that legal public access have had the effect of enabling adjacent landowners the opportunity to negotiate and create alternative access routes to that beach. And that's only exacerbating the potential risks that we're trying to minimise. And it's also is causing division within the South Head community, which I obviously represent and am close to. Also, the council's ability to close a legal road, i.e. a paper road, was challenged in the environmental court. It was a high-end road, and it was a community-led legal challenge that went to the environmental court. And basically, the council lost. There were hundreds of thousands of dollars of ratepayers' money spent, but it has set a precedence. And if that was permanently closed, or even potentially if the seasonal changes become a permanent closure becomes a permanent factors, which would be implemented under B, there's no reason not to expect the community to again seek a legal challenge. Now, that may or may not happen, but it's very possible. With regard to the comment that there's general support for seasonal closures and controlled access, I, as a local representative, pick up just the opposite feeling from the community. And finally, the local community has repeatedly raised the issue of enforcement or the lack thereof because there are rules already in place to control the behaviour on and around Motorized Beach. And they believe that the current rules are adequate, but apart from initial policing when those rules were first introduced, these rules have never really been adequately enforced. And I think we've heard that it's just an annual event when somebody turns up for a little period of time. A periodic checkpoint or appearance by police, or more frequent, or even fisheries officers, I'm sure would net an abundant of infringements and would easily cover operational costs that we would like to cover and protect against the fires and reckless driving and illegal fishing that has been indicated in hunting, been indicated in the paper. So for those reasons, Mr. Chair, I just find myself in a position unable to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Henderson.
Kia ora. Thank you, Chair. Look, I just wanted to briefly speak in support of Member Wilcox. I thought that corridor was really beautiful and really well reasoned as well. Last time we discussed this, I remember standing in support of the member, but voting to say, look, we were given assurances by staff that we're going to give it a crack. We're going to see if this works, and if it doesn't work, we're going to look at other options. I've always leaned toward the environmental protection element of this. We do need to protect those dune ecosystems that are of taonga. We owe it to future generations to do that. And so in line with Member Wilcox, I also can't support vehicle access to the beach at this time. I gave it a crack in my last vote to see how it was going to work, and it doesn't look like it's going to work. Thanks, Chair.
Kia ora. Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to acknowledge the officers just ever so briefly. I think we live in an imperfect world, and where we are with this proposal today probably is not going to suit everyone, but I think that it's a good transitional point. And I really do want to salute the officers because they're looking at it in terms of understanding the desires of councillors and members of the Independent Maori Statutory Board, but looking at the practicality of the situation as we try and progress policies going into the future. So to Scott and the team, I say a big thank you, wearing Parks portfolio hat, and realise that this is something that will continue to be debated and explored as we move forward, but they've given us a practical place in which to land for today, and thank you for allowing me to make a brief contribution.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Dalton.
I'll just be brief, Chair. Thank you very much. Look, I just too wanted to acknowledge what Member Wilcox said. It was really moving, and it's where we need to get to. But agreeing with Councillor Fletcher that everyone's done a really good job, I'd like to acknowledge Scott and Stephen, and in particular Phelan, the chair of the Rodney Local Board, who's been working long and hard on this and fronting it with community. And so well done on getting this here today, particularly with the new C. And I will be supporting that, but would like to see us land where Member Wilcox would like to see us land as well in the future. Kia ora.
Ka pai. If there's no further, and I haven't got it on the chat bar, I will close the debate. I also will be supporting that. I've just want to acknowledge Matua Glenn, because he rang me and explained to me what he was going to say, and I understand. But as Councillor Fletcher and also Councillor Dalton just expressed, we're at a crossroads in regards to looking at where we need to go. And the only way we're going to end up finding out where we're going is to consult with our community. And that is what A is all about. It's going through to consult with our community around this. Councillor Dalton also mentioned the chair of the local board, the Rodney Local Board. I had a discussion with him a couple of days ago, and I know that other people have had a discussion with him. And I know that he is totally supportive of B. He is totally supportive of that, because he's seen the issues When he came through this committee as well as workshops that we've had, we've seen how passionate he is with the other hats he wears. You know, around not only the destruction we're seeing at our dunes, but also the fires that have been lit in regards to this, and with him with the voluntary firemen, and look, for me, this is really saying to the chair and the Rodney local board, those members, saying to them, we support you, but we need to get the support of the community. I know what happened to our staff, and you were treated like crap. We all knew that. We were told that you were treated like crap. But as a result, you persevered with the local board, with Phelan. You persevered because the end game is having a look at what we can do at Motorized, our regional park. What can happen? What we can do to make sure that the destruction that has been outlined ceases, or even at a point that it's something that we can manage. But we need to do something. This is just a small part to say, let's get our community online. One further thing before I end up putting the recommendation is that there was that article that somebody sent me from the editor, I think, of the four-wheel drive, the editor, and I ended up having a look at his piece, and he was saying, hey guys, pull your head in. You know, this is good, because it's about the damage that is being caused by not only the four-wheel drive but vehicles. And he says, look, we need to look at the big picture. It was around the safety as well. So I too, as Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Dalton has said, and others, I want to acknowledge all the staff there, Phelan, the local board, in regards to where we are. But I totally agree, we need to end up where Matua Glen has said, no vehicles at all. Good luck. But here's a start. Here's a start for us to get the community on our side. So again, to our staff, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa, and I'm going to put the recommendation. All those in favour? Oh, sorry,
Aye.
my humble apologies.
Sorry.
Hold on, humble apologies. I've just seen the chat bar. So Councillor Sayers has asked for division. So there is a division, I'm assuming, on all of them, which is, okay, look, I'm just going to, division's called. So I'll just leave it at that. There was no exceptions to the others, but I'll let Hilda.
Kia ora. You're voting on item 16. Mayor Goff.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Cashmore. Councillor Filipaina.
Aye.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Councillor Bartley. Councillor Collins.
4.
Councillor Coombe.
Aye.
Councillor Cooper.
Abstain.
Councillor Dalton.
Aye.
Councillor Darby.
4.
Councillor Fletcher.
Yes.
Councillor Henderson.
Abstain.
Councillor Hills is not in the room. Councillor Mulholland.
I'm going to have to abstain with the reasons written.
Councillor Newman. Councillor Sayers.
No.
Councillor Stewart.
No.
Councillor Walker.
No.
Councillor Watson.
No.
Councillor Young. IMSB member Wilcox. He did say in the chat that he was against. IMSB member Kaki, who's in the room. I think that's it. Councillor Newman, are you online? Okay, need to put him as a no.
Did you hear me say no? Sorry.
Thank you, member Wilcox. We've put you as a no.
Kapai.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Look, we're just gonna now. I'm gonna put the recommendation. That's this part of the agenda finished. We're then gonna move into confidential. Our confidential item. So there's no extraordinary business, and there's a motion to exclude the public. I will move that. Councillor Casey, if you could second that to exclude. I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So